Hello, and welcome to the DCX podcast, where I interview leaders in the customer experience space about how digital is changing the landscape and how you can leverage these changes for success in your business. Today, I'm excited to be talking with Ted Mico. Ted is the co-founder and CEO of Thankful.ai, an AI customer service SaaS solution for customers and support agents. Founded in 2019, Thankful already powers service for brands who lead the world in customer experience, including Crate & Barrel, Ralph Lauren, Bombas, and Untuckit, among many others. So Ted, welcome. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. I'm honored to be called a leader in the space. That's fantastic.
Today, I want to talk to you about conversational AI, about customer experience. Certainly interested in understanding how you got into the space. So maybe we start with the basics. For people unfamiliar with the term conversational AI, how would you define it?
Well, let me define just general customer service AI, and then conversational AI, I guess, is a subset of that. It's a channel for that. I mean, AI in general can be so many things to so many people, and it is now seen as a value addendum to any company. So for Thankful, AI just means it's the brains that govern all non-human communication between brands and customers across all written channels. So we use deep learning models to power our natural language understanding. So we basically understand what the customer wants. And then we use some machine learning as well to provide a better experience and be able to mold the replies to reply, let's say, in a more personalized, individual way.
Maybe a little bit about yourself, kind of where you grew up, studied, and your path, how you actually got here. I'd love to hear the story behind what made you decide to bring Thankful AI to life.
Yeah, it's a crooked tale. I grew up in a small island off the coast of France called England, and I started my so-called professional life as a writer in England, and as a music journalist for one of the I guess it was the equivalent of Rolling Stone in Europe, called The Melody Maker. It's a very it was an esteemed publication. I was their features editor, and then when I moved to America, my first startup, I guess, was working for Dave Goldberg, who tragically died past 6 years ago, at launch, and then sort of had that was a fantastic experience.
Didn't it start in CD-ROMs? Was that launch?
Yeah, exactly. It started as CD. I joined after the CD, as it was moving online, as it was sort of trying to replicate that immersive music experience in the digital space. It was definitely before its time, and before broadband was pervasive. Taught me a lot. It taught me that having a great idea but being too early was not is not ideal. So after that, I did a whole bunch of digital media jobs. I was part of a four-man team that launched Beats with Jimmy Oven. I was the COO of a computer vision company called Myriad, which was upending advertising as we know it. And in between, I sort of wrote some books and worked for the likes of Bowie and the Stones and Radiohead, etc. So it's a very checkered, it's a very checkered past. Not your standard computer engineer. I did a little bit of that. Not your standard path. I mean, it seems completely random. It looks more like a Jackson Pollock, paint splatter across than a sort of well-worked career linear path. I didn't wake up at the age of 22 and think customer service software was my future. There are two common threads, I guess, and that's the important thing. The first thing is that whether it was digital media or advertising or disrupting customer service, it seemed that it's in my genes to shake up the status quo, and to be at the forefront of finding an industry that needs CPR and applying it. And then I guess the second thing is that whether it's writing or marketing or advertising, or customer experience, all of which I've had a lot of experience with. The key to success is, I guess, the ability to tell a unique and compelling story. And in an attention economy, like storytelling is obviously the most, it's the most highly valued commodity. So I guess those are the, if you were picking threads through what looks like total chaos, those would be the ones.
Well, I don't know anyone who's had a linear experience in life, so I totally appreciate the path you've taken. And so, tell me a little bit more about the background of how that got you to Thankful.ai.
Yeah, the story, like the sort of watered down story, is that it was born out of frustration. The more accurate story was that bad customer service from a number of different parties drove me from my usual state of like tranquil human being at love with the universe and being in the flow to a homicidal maniac that threw my phone across the room. I have hardwood floors, it exploded, which was pretty much an apt metaphor for my brain at the time. I unfortunately had already used up all my Apple customer care, my Apple Care. So the culmination of bad service cost me, like off the top, cost me $1,000 in a new phone. But I could not understand how technology had enhanced and enriched the customer experience so much up until I hit the buy button. And then and optimized it and made it better for me. And then as soon as I hit the buy button, it was almost exactly the opposite. It was like it was being used as a barrier to stop me getting where I needed to go. It was baffling to me how, the same brains that were involved with sort of on the acquisition side, the same sort of firepower and mental agility and ability to solve complex problems, none of that was being applied to the retention side. And I felt, with a lethal cocktail of ignorance and arrogance, I guess I felt with my co-founder Evan that we were the ones we were going to be the ones that solved this problem. And I will tell you that if I had known how difficult the problem really was to solve, we picked email to begin with because it was the most popular channel, and because we were Thankful was born out of our frustration with customer service. So we went at this from the end customer's point of view. It was what makes us different to everybody else. We wanted to solve the problems for us. I read a stat. I've said this before, but I read a stat in, like, I think it was Time, and it was copied in Forbes or Fortune, which said that in our average lifetime, each one of us will spend 43 days dealing with customer care. Over 6 weeks of my life, somewhere burning and roiling in brimstone and hell. It's just like so the idea of more of that, didn't appeal to me. So I kind of figured, if there was a moral imperative anywhere, it was to give everybody at least 3 weeks of their life back. So that was kind of, and we called the company Thankful because that is exactly the opposite word that most people would associate with customer care. If we were being accurate, we probably should have called the company Hateful. But because that's, again, how people walk into a customer experience. They've had so many bad experiences, especially with technology, that they think, it's going to be bad. And most of the time, their expectations are met in that. Right. And it's seemingly I am not alone in that. I just maybe my patience was tried just because I had this confluence of bad things happen at the same time. So it was more exaggerated. But everybody that I spoke to when we were thinking about starting this company had exactly the same experience. And weirdly enough, and this is sort of an odd thing, a bad technology experience made me feel like a failure. For some reason, it was like I couldn't short circuit the system. There was no star zero. There was no, like, I didn't have the keys to working through a chat. Like I felt like somehow other people had the roadmap and I didn't. And it turns out there is no roadmap. It was just bad technology. It was just bad technology. But I felt like I kept my failure secret because I didn't really want anybody else to know that I was incapable of circumventing, let's say, a bad chatbot. And it turns out, everybody's had the same bad experience.
Yeah, there's a very large contingent of people today who are pushing for, myself included, more digital experience, more self-serve for customers, so that they can manage their challenges or experience 24/7 from wherever they are. And there's a vision for where these experiences will go, where it can be much like a human agent. It understands me. It knows where I've been. It's empathetic, right? And it gives me the right answer.
Right, which is
Right.
First of all, it understands me, and secondly, it delivers the right answer. Exactly.
Yeah. So where are we in that process? Like, how far are we from that type of experience? And is it even possible to get to that place?
Yes. The short answer is yes, it is. I guess in the if you look at the customer service technology spectrum, you have the dreams of every customer and every brand is that you'll suddenly come up with Jarvis and, like Iron Man's assistant, and it will be able to understand you and say, have a nice day, and the weather is going to be, so and so, and provide you with the perfect answer that you'd never have thought of. Are we there? No. Will we get there? Maybe, maybe not. Like, I'm not sure. That is a long, long, long way away from the kind of Neanderthal chatbot experience, where like one grunt for yes, two grunts for no, that we usually get now. In the evolutionary ladder that we are thankful, at least, are far closer to Jarvis than we are to the primordial ooze of we're not clubbing people over the head with a woolly mammoth bone, put it that way. One thing I will say is that just because chatbots have been a toxic wasteland that have served no one, because they just don't understand the customer, and it feels you feel like you're being slung a very cheap piece of tech. And the experience is governed by cost rather than the desire to actually help me. But I don't think you can necessarily, to answer your question, I don't think you can use past experiences to dictate future outcomes. I think you have to be at least optimistic that technology can solve a lot of these problems if there is a willingness to do so. And one of the issues, I guess, that I had as a customer was that it felt like the needs of the business that was providing the customer service platform were prioritized over my needs. So like the needs of the platform was get something done cheaply and quickly and be able to integrate quickly, et cetera. And the needs of me as a customer is that I'm understood, that the reply is accurate, that hopefully that there's a certain amount of empathy, et cetera. It's personalized to me, all of those things were sort of ignored, whether deliberately or through the limitations of the technology to begin with. In the end, it didn't matter. Like, the outcome was the same, which was a poor experience.
That customers could do more. The companies wanted to do more. Either they were building something in-house or they were sold a solution. And AI, natural language processing, is still relatively in its infancy, setting up the infrastructure to understand and deliver through a conversation, right? If a customer says this, I say this, what's the next step? It's a lot more difficult than it's being sold as.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, if I had known exactly how difficult it was, I may not have chosen to do it. I seriously thought that I would have an MVP, that we could come up with an MVP. We would use some classifier models, et cetera. We would have an MVP in like 9 months, because Evan is the fantastic engineer. We had great engineering. We had great vision, et cetera. 3 years later, we barely had a product that, it was so much more difficult than we thought. Just understanding the nuance of what a customer really wants, not necessarily what they say, is is a real feat in itself. And then, just the ability then to, finding the answers is one thing, but really understanding when somebody says, like, I need to return these for a size larger, they don't mean a return. Or, hey, if my stuff doesn't come by next Thursday, like, I'm going to cancel. The last thing you want, and what you get with a lot of chatbots, is, here's how to cancel your order. Like, it, but you want, like, I'm not dissing on those people. That's really tough stuff. You need real deep learning models. You need to invest 3 years to actually do that. And because we wanted to start in email, we had to, because in email you have to get it right. You can't grope toward an answer using some bad digital IVR. You really have to understand the customer, because a back and forth in email over, like, over hours is not a good customer experience.
Tell me how that works then with you guys. With so email, you're saying is your focus.
Yeah, but every written channel is our focus. Our focus is that we actually don't think that brands or businesses should necessarily dictate the terms of engagement at all, that they should be wherever the customer wants them to be. So that, and obviously it's, for us, that's easier to do than everybody else, because we started with the most difficult thing to begin with. And so, a chat, our version of chat, using both buttons and freeform text, whatever, is so much, is much easier than somebody that's trying to migrate from a sort of a logic tree to forming the kind of, NLU, or natural language understanding and systems that we already had. So I guess that customer first focus that we had sort of ends up, as challenging as it was to begin with. And it was let's just say it was a dubious business decision to start with. Turns out to have it's had some great consequences down the line.
Are there better parts of a journey right now that are suited to AI?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I guess that the mantra for us, and it should be for everybody, is kind of, let technology do what technology does best, so your humans can do what humans do best. There are things that, there are repetitive tasks that AI can handle much better than a human, because they can handle policy decision making much quicker. They can get to things much quicker. They can be more accurate, more consistent. AI can handle surges in demand. I read recently a report that says that that the average, it's in e-com especially, the average time for consumption is like between 8 and 9 o'clock at night, when most customer service people aren't even around.
Right.
AI is perfectly equipped to deal with about 40 or 50 different things. So there are things that AI does very well, and the things that, like, but AI can, again, not only understand the customer well, but play its part in making sure that that customer journey in chat is much, much faster, that you're presenting the right button. You're not presenting just a digital IVR experience, which is just dreadful. It's really understanding what I've done before. If I've only had one order and it hasn't gone out yet, what are the likelihood that I want to track the order? Well, it hasn't gone out yet. Like, so there are all sorts of machine learning that you can apply that puts even the selection in a chat in a more predictable form. And then obviously AI can also look at your service history. It can see, like, oh, it's the 5th time. It doesn't have goldfish memory. It has a really good memory. It can see, oh, this is the 5th time you've asked about this. It should be, it can check your LTV from the CRM and see, like, how much of a discount do we now have to give you to keep you. It can measure your sentiment. The key, I think, really is to have a level of understanding that means that you know when to engage and when not to engage. Whatever AI you choose, everybody needs to make certain, like a buyer beware, that it's smart enough to know when to engage and when to leave it for a human being to engage. I think that's the most important thing.
So when you're talking with customers, what are they looking for? What are they trying to solve when they come to you?
That's a really great question. So when we first started talking to customers, this is sort of vaguely interesting, I guess. When we first started talking to customers, like 4 years ago, like when we were building this thing, we asked we asked our brands, and they pretty much all said the same thing, which, can you build a better deflection tool? We need to stop customers getting to our very expensive agent, because it's killing us. And we thought about that hard. And then we decided to ignore that advice because that wasn't why we started the company. We started the company to fix it for us. So we went, we said like, well, we're not going to deflect tickets. We're going to try and resolve the problem. We're going to build integrations with everything so we can resolve it. But we did exactly what they didn't want. Nowadays, that everybody's thinking has definitely evolved on the service side. They're looking for, I don't know, speed, expertise, consistency, reliability, control, which again, you don't always have with humans either. Personalization, what's the term? Resource elasticity, the ability to handle surges in demand. I'd say that that's what people are looking for now. And they are starting to look for a multi-channel experience. Again, there's been that sort of case where it's like, well, chat's cheap and easy. Let's do chat. As opposed to what do customers want?
Right.
So when you start looking at what customers want, they want to be engaged. They want to engage across all channels, and then certain times, certain channels. So why, when in a world where the power base is now with the customer, not with the company, why would you possibly try and dictate the terms? Let the customer dictate the terms, because that's empowering and again makes the customer feel as though you value.
These types of solutions require partnership with the company, right? It's not just this outsourced solution. So what should a company know about their involvement, their investment, both people, resources?
The first thing I would say is, not all AI is born equal, and to really check that level of understanding. That is it nuanced enough to be able to understand my customers across all channels? I'd say the next thing is to see how often the company brings up the idea of partnership, because I think it is a partnership. No matter how great the technology is, you still have to have, let's call it expert. There are AI expert, automation experts that have done this, 50 times, that really understand, okay, with this set of circumstances and these policies and these integrations, what is the best possible outcome? And that's I think that's not a nice to have, that's a requirement. But yeah, there is effort. There's because if you think about it, what automation is going to do is it's going to iron out all the wrinkles of your business that you've sort of inadvertently put into the business over sometimes many years. And what worked when you were 4 people in a garage does not necessarily work when you're a multi-billion-dollar company. And humans can kind of let's say hide or obfuscate the problems, whereas machines are much more like cut and dried. It's like it's either going to be this or it's going to be this. So sometimes you have to understand the parameters of a machine and be okay with that. We've had companies that literally sometimes they think that every integration comes with a magic wand.
Right.
And Shazam, like it is like all their problems and all their legacy stuff and everything else magically goes away. It's like, well, you're going to have to eventually, make your business more automatable no matter what, if you want to scale. So, any kind of integration into AI is going to force that. And I think there has to be a willingness, not only on the customer service department side, but actually on the company side to resource that. Okay, because we've had various instances where because customer service is usually the caboose in any business, that it is always grasping for resources that sales and marketing and product get, especially engineering resources. That has to change. In an economy that really business terms requires you to put service first, that also means you have to resource service first. Again, if you think of that we are entering purely entering a service economy, then resourcing customer service is not, again, a kind of, well, that's a nice idea, I'll park that for a while. It's actually it's vital to every company's survival. Absolutely. And I will say, I mean, we're in e-com. So I can speak specifically to e-com because e-com is kind of the canary in the customer experience coal mine. What's happening to e-com and the rift valley between a customer's expectation for service, well, those things I listed before, I want it prompt, I want it personal, I want and any brand's ability to deliver against those expectations, the shearing force is getting wider and wider and wider. And the wider that gap becomes, the more revenue risk there is. So the only solution to that is some form of technology and automation. It is not the cure for everything. There still has to be a lot of people involved, but it's a driving force in meeting some of those customer expectations. So it's kind of what happens in e-com, I think, will happen everywhere else.
So we're entering kind of this period of economic uncertainty. How do you see AI helping companies drive savings and customer retention?
Well, look, so as acquisition costs rise, whether it's Apple's no tracking, whether it's cookies and Google, or just general market forces, more attention gets paid on the LTV side of the business. And the happy hunting ground of LTV can only be, the path to that is through service. There's no other, there's no workaround. It is always through service. So I think it plays a more, customer service in general, and as I said, automation within that plays a vital part in not just a business thriving, but actually surviving and through a recession.
So go out a little bit further, go out like 5 years or so. What's the level of agility and opportunity with AI and NLP, 5 years from now?
So I think that the level of NLP is purely based also on the nature of the problems. For instance, there's an electronics company that does in-home speakers, and I've had issues in the past with them, and I end up like always with a tier 2 Seattle-based person, going through Wi-Fi frequencies, etc. AI is not going to be doing that probably ever. There are not enough use cases to build enough data to be able to do that accurately. So if your use cases are a spectrum of pretty intense technical support, for instance, the AI will take a little bit of that, but you're still going to have to resource to the how do I do this? Like changing seats on a plane. AI can do that. Good support can do that now.
Yeah.
Either through self-serve or I can do it, or it can be done for me, or in an automated way. But there are other things where it can't. Hey, I need I'm trying to think of it. I need a hotel that hasn't had a terrorist incident for the last 50 years. Like there are all sorts of weird travel things that that again, those are edge cases. And one thing I will say is that what I didn't realize going in, and now I'm sort of become an exponent of, is that customer service it is just a world of edge cases. There is no, there's no like 80-20 rule. Oh, we can do 80% here, 20. It's all edge, pretty much all edge cases. And I think you have to be at peace with that. And again, find technology that can deal with that. Anybody that says like, oh, we're going to handle these things, without a problem is either delusional or lying, because it's difficult stuff. And understanding customer intent is not for the faint of heart, or the challenged.
Yeah. Well, Ted, really wonderful to speak with you. Thank you for your sharing your experience and the challenges and the opportunities in this space. I think it's extremely exciting, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
One